Brandon Bankhead was 19 years old when he was last seen on May 28, 2016 at the Life Center International Church in St. Louis, Missouri, after attending his great-grandmother's funeral. When the funeral ended, Brandon was seen getting into a vehicle with his friends, and he has never been seen or heard from again. The vehicle was described as a black four-door car with tinted windows and black rims. None of his family members recognized the friends he left the service with. A few weeks after he disappeared, Brandon's mother received a disturbing phone call stating that Brandon was being held captive in a vacant home in Walnut Park and he was going to be killed. According to Brandon's grandma, the unidentified caller said, "We got your son. We got him in a closet tied up, and we're getting ready to kill him." The call has never been traced, and family members believe foul play was involved in his disappearance. Laquanta Riley was born on February 26, 1984, to her mother Pam Riley. Her mother was only a teenager at the time of giving birth to Laquanta, so she let her sister Katie raise her. Despite being raised by her aunt, Laquanta and Pam had a very good relationship. Laquanta was the oldest of her 5 younger siblings, and she had developed a very close bond with her cousin Stacy while living with her aunt. Laquanta was an honor student in high school who received a full scholarship to college where she planned to study forensic science and criminal justice, and she is described as being very bubbly, bright, and ambitious. In 2003, Laquanta decided to move in an apartment with a high school friend in Eufaula, Alabama, but around Thanksgiving time, Laquanta made the choice to move out after a disagreement occurred. Laquanta returned to her apartment to gather the remainder of her belongings on December 5, 2003. She had called her mother to get a ride back to her Aunt Katie's house, but she was unable to pick her up at the moment. During the phone call, Pam could sense that Laquanta was upset, but she didn't want to seem like she was intruding, so she decided to give her some space and not question her about what was wrong. Laquanta somehow was luckily able to find a way back home to her aunt's house in Montgomery, Alabama. On December 7, 2003, at around 11:30 p.m., Laquanta was seen getting into a dark green 4-door car at her aunt's house. She was driven to her mother's house to grab a jacket. Her younger brother answered the door and questioned her about who was driving the car. Laquanta simply told him that it was a friend from the neighborhood. He didn't recognize the vehicle, which was later described as a Ford Taurus or a Chevy Caprice. Laquanta returned to the car and has never been seen again. She was reported missing 3 days later and had left behind her purse and some money. A few days to a few weeks after Laquanta's disappearance, Pam received a voice message on her phone. The caller sounded like Laquanta, and you could hear her either saying, "Let me go home," or "Leave me alone." There was a male voice in the background that said her name, Laquanta, before the call was disconnected. A copy of this recording was made by the police, but the call was unable to be traced. The recording has not been made public. Police later found Laquanta's name being used to rent out an apartment in Stone Mountain, Georgia, which is the same area she graduated high school from. Stone Mountain, Georgia is about 2.5 hours from Montgomery, Alabama, where she resided with her aunt. Pam took the 2.5-hour drive all the way to Stone Mountain, Georgia to do some investigating herself. She was able to speak to a resident of 2 years of that same apartment complex. She showed him a picture of Laquanta, and he claimed that she lived down the hall from him for a short time and asked to use his phone after an argument. He also stated that Laquanta moved out just a few days before Pam arrived, and there hasn't been any leads since then. Pam feels that the police didn't do much for her daughter and claims that they never checked phone records or searched Katie's house. She still believes her daughter is alive today, and every year the community holds a vigil where balloons are released on her birthday to show she's unforgotten. The case is still open and now has a new assigned detective working on it. Barrage Rattu, also known as Raj, is remembered by his father as a strong, gentle, responsible young man. Barrage was driving taxis part-time on the weekends with his father, and they lived in Surrey, British Columbia. On November 6, 1995, just 6 weeks before his 20th birthday, he had asked to use his father's car to go see some friends. At around 7 p.m. that night, he was seen by his fellow co-worker, a Royal City taxi driver as well, who had been shopping at a grocery store near 138th Street and 72 Avenue in Surrey. Raj was sitting in a car, drinking a beer with another young man, and he has never been seen again. On November 8th, just after 1 a.m., a young woman called the family's home phone and thought she was speaking to Barrage. The lady on the other line said, "Raj, you were beaten up." She began laughing and hung up. The next day, literally around the exact same time as the night before, the family received another phone call, but this time it was an older woman calling. The woman on the other line said that Raj was no longer alive, and the call was disconnected again. A few days later, his dad's car was found in Chilliwack, which is an hour away from his residence. The car was burnt down and had to be identified by his VIN number. Barrage's clothes were in the car, stained with blood, but he was nowhere to be found. There hasn't been any more leads on the case. The female callers were never traced, and the case still remains unsolved today.